One Night Unremembered, a novel by Thomas G. Hedberg, Ph.D., read by the author. Copyright 2011 by Thomas G. Hedberg and ESPC Books. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. Robert Frost. Prelude, Kansas, 1896. First, there are upward of 31 septillion Mildred fleets. They range from fiery red-haired women of overpowering sexuality to eel-like creatures with voices like the last gurgle of water down a drain. In the multiverse they inhabit, 11-dimensional quantum collisions have engendered an infinity of nearly identical mirror worlds, which exchange gravitons but little else. In one, an aged and broken Mildred fleet died alone and destitute decades ago. In her world, frail bones and the contorted fragments of dreams litter the floor of an abyssal deep, 370 miles from Newfoundland. But there is another world, a small watery planet, the third orbiting a moderate-sized yellow star, in which a vigorous Mildred fleet lives on in her 124th year, where only fish and a few chattering crustaceans probe that primordial darkness 2.5 miles down, where the sum is merely a small pretty river, famous for good fishing. From its start, that world was never very different from our own. Violence, ignorance, and destruction had equally heralded the rise of its humankind. The stone-clutching hominid of its Pliocene was brother to the Krupp armaments baron of its Age of Steel. Elegant civilizations winked in and out of its history, but on all the same paths, the dogs of war ran free, and havoc was ever the cry. But there was a turning point. For millennia, intellects vast, alien, and immortal had monitored its centuries of billowing carnage with alarm. Hunger for the comradeship of its intelligence was repeatedly beggared by the crescendoing talent it showed for cruelty and annihilation. In monumental ignorance, humanity toiled away, producing soul-searing beauty and horrifying nightmares. Even the huge and once promising Western nation called America had already butchered its wildlife, leveled its primeval forests, slain the flower of its youth in civil war, relentlessly decimated its aboriginal inhabitants, and had now begun looking elsewhere. The prognosis was poor. After 3,000 years of assessment, a summary decision was made 2 miles above a yellow and baking Kansas prairie, in April of the year locally reckoned as 1896. The decision was transmitted from the survey ship and confirmed instantly via an antimatter tesseract. 2 or 3 further experimental psi contacts would be permitted, one with the family of the dim-witted farmer watching below. 50 further orbits around the parent star would be allowed. 100 seasons more of this tumultuous evolution. And if the course had not varied, if the danger had not diminished, a quick and painless oblivion, and perhaps, long aeons hence, the rise of another species, less ready to thrive in the company of death. Clyde Fleet, erstwhile corn mogul, was fragrant with the redolence of a winter spent unwashed. Clad in union suit, drawers, and suspenders, he lounged gloriously, each butterfly thought alighting briefly on a needed farmyard task, and then fleeing in panic. Boots in the air, legs resting on a water trough, hands behind head on the crushed, sweet-smelling cornstalks, he now peered upward through a vivid blue sky, gaze riveted on the odd, silvery object that seemed to dart and stop, and dart forward again. "Well, that is a regular spectacle, I believe," he murmured, a nearby hog his only company. The cloud-like apparition appeared to glimmer and blink. Clyde craned his neck forward and squinted at it intently. Seemingly caught in a brief zephyr that stirred the dry cornstalks, it shivered, blinked again, and then vanished upward with a just audible whoosh. Clyde whistled softly and looked around. The pig looked back, snuffled noncommittally, continued rooting in the mud. Birds tweeted mindlessly. No one else was in sight. This story would be lucky to get anything more than an icy stare from the grim, no-nonsense Norwegian farmers in this county. Clyde let out a sigh and scratched at the still festering insect bite. He wondered who he could tell. He thought of his relations back home. With his eye always on the sea and sky, little 9-year-old Freddie, his favorite nephew, would love to hear about this. "Well, I owe them a letter, anyway," Clyde said. Finding the idea of letter writing tiring, Clyde pushed his hat forward, adjusted a rough spot in his overalls, and sank deeper into the cushion of cornstalks. He'd get to the letter by and by. Silver clouds notwithstanding, nothing changed much from day to day in this place, or was likely to. The sun would come up, the cows would come home. The sun beat down through the languid haze, and he slept. Cattle lowed in the distance, the standing corn glowed humidly green. All seemed right with the world.